Hi, my name is Dylan Gray, and my presentation is on evolution, the past, present, and future. So I wanted to start by defining evolution. So evolution is defined as the descent with modification from pre-existing species, cumulative inherited change in a population of organisms through time, leading to the appearance of new forms. The theory of evolution suggests a common ancestor for many species, and it promotes the idea that environmental factors, genetic mutations, and time all play roles in species' existence, including what they eat, how they look, and how they regulate their body temperatures. So, how is evolution relevant to humans? So, evolution in humans has been a pretty interesting debate. Scientists believe that we share a common ancestor with apes, but a lot of people are pretty offended by the theory. Much like other species, humans would need to evolve for a series of reasons, including climate and food sources. We have several suggestions as to how humans have evolved through history, but another pretty interesting theory is how humans are going to continue to evolve in the future. So I wanted to highlight this depiction right here, which talks about the human lineage. So these are some of our species ancestors, and we talk about the divergence of where apes could have had a common ancestor. Would have actually been a little bit slightly before here, before we were totally bipedal. But this is a pretty good depiction of the way that we have changed and the way that humans could have diverged from previous species. I also wanted to highlight this interactive tool from the Smithsonian. I found this to be pretty interesting because it talks about the different climates over time and the way some of the monumental marks in species evolution. So starting all the way over here, this is about 6 million years ago. It's the oldest evidence for walking on two legs from one of the earliest humans. This could have helped the species survive in diverse habitats, including forests and grasslands. If we move over here, we're getting a bit closer. This is about 4 million years ago. During this time, early human species lived near open areas and dense woods, and their bodies had evolved in ways that enabled them to walk upright most of the time, but still climb trees. So that's like being mostly bipedal. This is about 2.6 million years ago at the dawn of technology. Technology could help us access new foods and also gave us a lot of tools so that way we could hunt different animals. Moving down the line, we're getting into about 800,000 years ago, which is the control of fire, which again is monumental and revolutionary when it comes to food access, social and comfort and warmth, and can also soften our food sources. Moving over, we're getting to about 800,000 to 200,000 years ago is a change in human brain size, which allows us to be deeper thinkers. And the last one that they have up here is 12,000 years ago, which is when we began to control the growth and breeding of certain plants and animals. I found this to be incredibly interesting because I know that a lot of the agricultural booms that we are so used to learning about are evidently much closer in time, but you can see that our species was actually learning about it about 12,000 years ago. And then if you come up here, here's climate fluctuations. So we can see that a lot of these changes happened and a lot of our evolutionary modern traits happened when we were in cooler temperatures and about the warmer temperatures traits. So it also talks about the different types of species that we could have evolved from. You'll see over here that Homo sapiens are actually a very small timeline compared to the rest. We think that they've evolved from Africa, but they're now worldwide, and they were about 200,000 years ago to present is when they've existed. Charles Darwin was pretty far ahead of his time when he published The Origin of Species. Highlighting his theories regarding biological evolution, Darwin spread his ideas of natural selection and species variation, and this made a lot of people pretty uncomfortable. In a society that believed primarily in the ideas of creationism, it was almost impossible to convince people that they had come from the same ancestors as apes. How would apes not evolve as we did if this theory were possible? Darwin spent 5 years on a ship, the Beagle, researching species around the world, where there had been theories of, while there had been theories of evolution before, the dominant one encompassed the idea of transmutation, and Darwin's theory was incredibly unique. In Darwin's understanding of natural selection, he believed that animals bred with other animals that had desirable traits for their environment. This natural selection was important to the development of variation in species and contributed to the evolution that allowed adaptation in changing environments. Natural selection is relevant in human history as much as it was relevant in the evolution of Darwin's examined finches. Modern humans are assumed to have evolved from Homo heidelbergensis, and Neanderthals are assumed to have descended from the same, illustrating the variation and divergence of species into multiple species to accommodate different environments. So for a very long time, people tended to contribute the variation of species to an act of God. Creationism was almost a science. The variation of species became a pretty crucial part of understanding animal development, and until Darwin's theory, the idea of evolution was hardly brought up and very far-fetched. Darwin's evidence was revolutionary in creating an era of evolutionary exploration, and the idea that we are ever changing and adapting and evolving was incredibly important in scientific history. So there's still quite a bit of controversy over how humans are going to continue to evolve as a species, but a lot of scientists agree that there's going to be less predominant races as we have more interracial breeding. So I wanted to actually reference an article from National Geographic that I found to be incredibly interesting, and it talked about evolution in the future. One point that it mentioned was that because of birth rates and ovulation cycles, for shorter, stouter women, it's likely that we will have a generation of shorter and slightly heavier women in the future. Another really interesting thing that it talked about was, I'm actually going to quote directly from the article because I don't know that I could paraphrase it well enough, but we're also going to get a stronger sexual selection because the more advanced the technology gets, the greater an effect general intelligence will have on each individual's economic and social success. Because as technology gets more complex, you'll need more intelligence to master it. The intelligence results in higher earnings, social status, and sexual attractiveness. Miller added that artificial selection using genetic technologies will likely accentuate these changes in the future. Parents could basically choose which sperm and which egg get to meet up and produce a baby based on the genetic information about which genes contribute to which physical and mental traits. If the rich and powerful keep the artificial selection technology to themselves, then you could get that kind of split between a kind of upper class dominant population and a lower class genetically oppressed population, he said. But I think it's very likely that new genetic technology will be widespread in their use simply because that's more profitable. So I think there's actually going to be a leveling effect where both the poor and the rich are going to be able to have the best kids they genetically can. So another important thing to mention is that as we advance in technological reproduction, we can filter out mutations such as cancer and other lethal mutations, making a stronger and healthier species. While sexual selection can take our evolution to a certain level, as we manipulate genes further with technological advancements, we can more efficiently control our offspring's traits and create a lasting health impression through many generations, changing the human species. So while for millions of years, natural and sexual selection were incredibly prominent in creating and shaping our species, I think it's time that we start to acknowledge the technological advancements and the ways that they are contributing to our strength, health, and advancements as well. Technological advancements such as modern medicine were only the beginning. The idea of manipulating genes in a way that can prevent diseases and mutations and cancer is the next step. So natural evolution is going to continue to occur. It's going to affect Homo sapiens as shorter and heavier women are bearing more children than the tall, thin counterparts. But as technology advances, we're going to have more control over our not-so-natural selection. Rather than just attracting specific mates over attractiveness and necessary qualities, we're going to have the ability to select specific traits that we want to pass down to our children through a germ cell with specific ova and sperm.